happy Wednesday. My name is Lindsey Hall, and I am an intimacy and empowerment coach who specializes in working with women through their divorce process, but by no means is that all I do. I also help women who want to go from feeling like, ugh, is this it, to, is this real life, about their lives. So I do all kinds of amazing work like that. And once a week, I have these tea break chats and question and answer sessions. So, hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Sorry, extra bubbly today. So, goodness, I actually have been working right up until now and haven't really put any thought into what I was going to talk about this week. So, let me just have a quick think about what's gone on this week. Well, I drink my lemon and honey water. It's so yummy. Okay, what's gone on this week has been two things, really. And they both relate to being very human. My human has been showing this week for sure. So sometimes I'm this great enlightened place. I mean, I'm never some sort of spiritual guru or anything like that. I am always human. But sometimes my human comes out more than other times, and this week has been particularly so. So I have still been a little bit tantrumy. So I think I talked about this a little bit last week, where I was feeling, how did I relate it last week? Trusting in the process and thinking that I'm going to just show up as, the future version of me, no matter what. And that, the tantrumy part of me has still kind of been kicking off a little bit this week, but it very much has come and gone. So I flip-flop between thinking this is all under control, I totally trust and surrender, and, and I'm taking the action and the universe is doing its part, and it is all happening. And then we'll flip-flop back to, oh, this sucks. It feels very uncomfortable. I am not a fan of this. Can it please hurry up? And just kind of vacillating back and forth between those. And the important thing, the reason I'm telling you this is, first of all, because, like I said, it makes me human. So this does not at all make me a bad coach. And I don't ever want to hide it from you, because I feel like, oh my gosh, if people know that I have these moments of fear and these tantrums, they're going to think I'm a terrible coach. They're going to think I don't have my shit together and I can't help them because, clearly if I'm having this fear, then, how can I possibly help my clients? And that is utter nonsense. Because one of my favorite things when my coaches tell me is when they have these tantrums too, when their fears kick in, when they've had a crappy day. Not because I'm glad that they feel crappy or that they're having, a tantrum or feeling down about things, but because it reminds me exactly that, oh yeah, my coaches are human too. And they have these same fears. This is part of the process. In fact, these fears kicking in actually is a really great sign that I'm on the right trajectory, because the fears kick in, when we're growing, when we're expanding. And if I wasn't having all of these fears sometimes, then it would mean that I was just sitting comfortably in my comfort zone, not growing, not expanding, and being everything's chill, man, it's cool. And that's not what I'm here for. I want to keep growing and expanding, and that means sometimes doing these big scary things and having the, having these moments of, about things. So it's a good sign when these tantrums and panics come in, because it means that you're growing and expanding. And like I said, I know that my coaches have these, and they are significantly further ahead in certain areas of their lives, including their coaching businesses, including their love lives. Both of my coaches are married. I am single. They've got some of this stuff down, and they still have this same stuff going on in their brain. It's just at a different level of it. So by them giving me permission to be human, I'm sharing it with you so that you have permission to be human too. And that if you come to me with your tantrums and your about stuff, I'm not going to be sitting here on my pedestal being well, isn't that so very uncool of you? I've never experienced those feelings. I think that everything is perfectly fine all the time. And if you don't, then clearly there's something wrong with you, because you are feeling down there in the shit and you shouldn't be. You shouldn't feel that way. That's never going to happen. Never, ever, ever. instead, what will happen is I'll be like, yep, those feelings suck, don't they? I totally get it. It's okay to feel those feelings. It's okay to recognize them. And sometimes it's a case of, well, let's look deeper into it and see what it is that you need. You know, is it like the little kid inside of you who needs a hug and a nap and a snack? Or is it simply a case of being like, I see you and we're going to move on? You know, we can look at that and figure out what that is a sign of, and we can work on it together. So that's kind of where I've been at this week, is that, like, yeah, like I said, back and forth, up and down, and being like, everything's great, everything's terrible, everything's great, everything's terrible. And that's the phase that I am in right now. I actually just saw a thing about, I'm not huge into astrology and I don't understand the planets and the signs and all that, but I do, just because I don't understand it and I'm not huge into it doesn't mean I don't believe it's happening, it's affecting me. It just means there's too much for me to learn all at once. But I did just see a post about the astrology stuff that basically was saying that, like, March is a huge time of change for all of us. It's the opening of, like, a whole bunch of new seasons of things, and that it's a big, powerful shift. And I think that what I'm feeling is definitely the start of that. So if you're feeling that, or you're going to come up to feeling that in these next few weeks, just know that apparently there's astrological reasons for it. Yay! But it's also like a really powerful, like, start of a new time and new doors opening. And I am so here for that. I am so here for the big new things that are on the horizon. Like, welcome, the doors are wide open. Bring on the big stuff. So come on in. Bring on the big stuff with me. So that's where I've been at this week. I've also this week had a big intimate conversation that I've been needing to have. And so in addition to, well, not in addition to, this actually, like, this timing is all quite, I don't know, fortuitous. I got to kind of, like, wrap up something that's been draining, or not draining, but using up my energy for a long time now. I got to sort of wrap that up, put some closure on it, and feel like I could shut a door to something so that I can now have the new door opening to all the new stuff. So that this week, and I don't want to go into details about it, but it was something that, like I said, it's been, like, using my energy for quite a long time, and it required an intimate conversation, which required a bunch of my intimacy skills of being able to hold the uncomfortable feelings, being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to say, hey, can you talk to me about this? Like, and not being sure of what the answer was going to be, not being sure how the conversation was going to go, and knowing that, following my nudge, I'm thinking, no, this is a conversation that I need to have, because it was something where I could have done it without the conversation. I had spent some time thinking, you don't need this conversation. Like, come on, Lindsey, just do this all in your own head. I was like, no, I want to have this conversation. And following that nudge, and actually what came out of it was so surprising in some ways. And parts of it were very surprising, parts of it were not surprising at all. But it was really, 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 really helpful. And just, again, a reminder to follow those intuitions and those nudges, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. If there's something where you're like, I just want to do this, and your brain might be like, but why? You don't need to do that. That's not necessary. But your brain doesn't always know why things are happening. Your brain's like, just, don't make any waves at all. Just try, just go by with the most, like, nothingness possible. Whereas I had this nudge inside of me. It was like, have this conversation. Like, don't do this on your own. Have this conversation. And like I said, I was really surprised by parts that came out of the conversation. So it was a reminder, A, to follow my intuition and those nudges, and B, to be open to being surprised by the universe and to be open to whatever the universe throws at you, because I absolutely did not expect parts of this conversation, and it absolutely was exactly what I needed to hear at, like, just wonderful timing. So, like I said, I know I'm being a bit vague here, but it was just really, really good timing, and all because I was willing to be open to receiving it. So that's what's been going on this week. That was a big one. Okay. I have one question this week, which I think is a really interesting one, and something that I actually don't really talk about very much on here. So I love that this question came up. But the question was, do I track my period, and why or why not? And I think it came up because I did post this week. Like I said, it was day one of my period on Monday, and I said that I knew that I needed extra compassion and gentleness and ease. And this morning I had posted that it's day 3, and that my body was asking again for like ease. So I did a really a 20-minute slow, gentle yin yoga. Instead of, I usually do more vinyasa flow. I tend to do like intermediate ones. So they are a bit more challenging in some ways. But I knew that I wanted to move today, but I also knew that because it's day 3, I needed to have ease and gentleness. So yin yoga is the slow one. So there was only in the 20-minute yoga session, there was like 6 or 7 poses, and you hold them for several minutes each. And it's just like really letting your body sink into each pose rather than about the flow. So that was all sidetrack of, I shared those bits on my stories. So I think that is why the question has come up of like, well, why are you talking about your period? And do you track, like, why are you talking about day 1 and day 3, and do you track it? So my answer to this is yes and no. I do track my period-ish. I want to do it more, and the reason I don't do it more is pure laziness. That is it. I took, when was it? Last summer, I think? Last spring? I don't know. Sometime last year, I took a program with a wonderful woman named Lindsey called Reclaim Your Cyclical Wisdom. And it was I think it was 8 weeks, maybe 12 weeks program, and we met weekly, and it was about tracking your cycle and about the wisdom that comes from each phase of your cycle. Hi. And it about, what, like the wisdom that comes from each phase of your cycle, and about how tracking it like daily. So day 1 is the first day that you start bleeding, and then every day after that until you come to the next day 1. And that by tracking it, you can start to see your own cyclical patterns. So there's some that are kind of more common for lots of people. But really, by just taking a few notes every day on like noting what day it is of your cycle, and like how you're feeling, and kind of, it can be physical or emotional or whatever it is, but you can start to see your patterns. And I learned so much from that. So that's why I say I want to do it more, because it was super, super helpful in terms of understanding where I'm at, my moods, things like that. And I was having a conversation with somebody recently, actually. So she was telling me that she had been struggling with self-love, and that she's like, I can barely look myself in the mirror right now. Like, I absolutely hate what I see. I'm just fat and ugly and horrible, and like really, really down on herself. And she said, but it tends to be, she thinks it's linked to her cycle. She said, it's something to do with my period. And I was like, okay, well, have you thought about tracking your cycle? And she hadn't. She said, well, what's the point of that? But the point of it is that, and this isn't necessarily going to be, a fix-all, cure-all, but like for my brain, understanding things helps me immensely. It doesn't always make it okay, whatever the thing is, but it helps it changes it in my brain when I can understand why something is happening. Which, by the way, is like the conversation I was saying I had earlier this week. It was about getting clarity on something. So I didn't necessarily like the outcome, but I understand it more now, and that helps me accept things. So same with tracking your period. So when she was saying she was struggling with self-love, I said, if you can track it and you can know that every month, say it's the week before your period, or maybe it's the week of, or whatever it is, but there is like the week before our period tends to be when we get a bit more, most of us have heard of PMS, PMT, whatever else. And, we, pop culture talks about as like being bitchy or being crabby at that time. And there's so much more that comes from that. But that can be a time when our inner critic comes out more, when we can be a bit more like not putting up with any shit, that kind of thing. So if she were to notice that it was every 3rd week that she felt this like intense self-loathing when she looked in the mirror, it wouldn't necessarily make that self-loathing go away, but she could, instead of being like, oh, I'm a horrible person, it could help with, oh, wait a second here. I can't stand the sight of myself in the mirror right now, but it's because my hormones are going crazy right now. It's the 3rd week of my cycle. I know this isn't going to last. I know that next week I'm going to feel differently. And you can, once you start to see those patterns, you can be like, this isn't going to last forever. This is what my body is telling me right now. And eventually you can start to shift that as well. But in the immediate term, what can be helpful is that just that knowledge, and be like, right, I actually don't necessarily hate myself. It's just that my hormones are all this big cocktail of ridiculousness. And that's why looking in the mirror is tough right now. But if I can just wait this out, if I can put on my comfy clothes and maybe like do up my makeup extra great, or maybe do no makeup, whatever it is, but you can tune in and go, what is it that I need right now? Like, what will help me through this phase? And if I can get through this phase, I know there's going to be another one. I know, because I've been tracking it, that I only hate myself for 3 days, and then it gets better. And it can help you just go, okay, don't beat yourself up. Just know that this is coming next. And then I kind of previewed into the next bit, which is once you know that that's why it's happening, then you can start to pick up on, what do I have to do to make this easier on myself? Like, how can I lessen the impact that it has on me? How can I lessen that, like, what needs can I fill for myself at this time? And at other times of your cycle, it can be more like, you might notice that the second week of every cycle, you're like, I am on top of the world. Like, I get so much done this week. Like, you might start to pick up that in that week, you're like, that's when I can do all the chores and I get like, whiz through my to-do list. And so then you can start to plan things around that. Like, right, so that's the week that I'm going to plan social events because I know I'm going to want to go out and be social. Whereas I know that, like, on my bleeding week, I actually maybe don't like to talk to people quite as much. So I might reconsider social events at that time. And I know that that's the time when I want to cozy up on the couch. Whereas like week 2 is the week where I'm like, come on, let's see all my friends. Let's have lunch. Let's go do the things. Let's, do the speaking event at work. Let's do the presentation. And you can start to notice your own energy levels and your own productivity and your own feelings. And you can sort of plan things around it. And even if you're only making minor changes to your life, like you might not be able to do every work presentation in week 2 when you feel on top of the world. Some presentations can't be moved and you have to do them in your period week. And that's okay too. But then you can check on, okay, I know it's not going to be the easiest for me to do the presentation that week. So how can I build a self-care plan around it? But even if you can just move a few things to the times when they most naturally kind of align with your energy levels, you'll notice a big shift in how things feel. And I think we've been so programmed that we should just feel the same all the time, always feel awesome. And if you don't feel awesome, well, clearly there's something the matter. Like, we want it to be always, always here. And actually we are like this. We go up and down. We have cycles. We all do, but women more so have the monthly cycles. Men have much more of a 24-hour cycle. So they feel their energy levels are in the morning, they come people for lunch, they start dropping, they're really down about 5 o'clock, which is when the workday ends, and then it starts over again the next day. So men have much more of a 24-hour cycle, whereas women have less of the 24-hour cycle is still there, but not as strong, and we have more of the 28-ish day cycle. So we can see our energies change over that time period. And rather than thinking it's wrong that sometimes you just want to cozy up on the couch and sometimes you're on top of the world and want to socialize, if we can embrace that and flow with it, it makes such a huge difference to how we feel. So that is why, the long answer, that is why, yes, I like to track my cycle. I like to know where I am in the monthly cycle. I did tracking pretty consistently for about 6 months or so, which is where I could pick up on those cycles. And then, like I said, I kind of got lazy. I don't track it as consistently these days. But this month I'm trying to get back onto it. So we'll see how it goes. But I definitely, because like I said, it can help where last week I was like, why am I feeling so about things? And because I hadn't been consistently tracking, I was like, I think it's the week before my period. I think when I start to bleed and I notice this was the week before, this will all make much more sense. And sure enough, it did. But I wasn't entirely sure that that's where I was in my cycle. Whereas I'm making a bigger effort to get back on top of it this month so that I can, as long as I know where I am in the month, it can really, really help me. But like I said, I also want to go back into planning. Because I have big things that I want to do in my business, and I know that if I can plan a bunch of meetings in the high energy weeks, then great. And if I can plan content writing time in the lower energy, or actually more specifically, there's a time where I'm better at like writing content, and there's a time where I have no creativity at all. Like there's a certain time in the month where I am like, I have nothing useful to say. And there's another time of the month where I'm like, I have all these ideas flying out of my head and I just can't keep them straight. How am I going to like share all the things with all the people? So I want to write the content when I'm in this like, I've got all these ideas time, and store it up so that the times where I'm like, literally no words, I already have something I can say in that time. So that's why I'm getting back into the tracking, and that I am going to use that time much more efficiently, so that, because you find that actually by doing that, by trying to keep like a consistent level all the time and fighting against that natural cycle, you end up just wasting a whole bunch of energy and time by fighting against it. Whereas if you can embrace it and let yourself be super productive when you're super productive, and let yourself rest when you need the rest, you'll then be able to be, more productive than productive times. Whereas if you try and push through what is the rest time, and you try and be productive during that time, when it comes back around to your higher energy time, you will still have a bit less because you've been worn out from when you should have rested. So giving yourself what you need at each cycle makes each one that much more productive. Like each part of the cycle, each season within there has a use and a purpose. And the more we can embrace this, the better life is going to feel. So I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if you thought you were going to get that much when you asked it, but hopefully that helped. And I obviously can talk about this quite a bit, so feel free to send me a message if you want to talk about more. Also, I did notice the other day that, remember I said that I took this program through a woman named Lindsey. She just posted recently that she's going to be opening up the next round of her Reclaim Your Cyclical Wisdom. And so I don't know when it's restarting, but I'm sure I saw something about it. So if you're interested in signing up for that as well, let me know and I can send you her links and info, because it was super, super amazing. I had never done anything at all to do with like periods and cycles and tracking. I knew nothing. I just knew that like people seem to talk about this and seem to talk about it as though it's like this magic key and all this untapped wisdom, and like I don't understand, but if there's some untapped wisdom here, I want it. So I signed up knowing nothing, and it was so enlightening and illuminating, and I 100% recommend it to any woman just to like start to be like, so what's out there? What else is there? What am I missing? So yeah, let me know if you want the info, and I will happily share it with you. Okay, I am going to wrap up there, and I will wrap up as I always do by saying, if any of this brought up anything for you and you want to talk about it, let me know in the comments. Let's get the conversation going. Send me a message. We can talk about it privately. If you want to talk about one-to-one coaching, obviously I am here for that. So I've got an option for 3 sessions for £444. So we can do kind of like a short but intense introduction. Or there's always the luxury package, which is my 3 months. And that is for, you get 3 calls a month and you get Voxer access. And honestly, let me tell you, Voxer access is where it's at, because that basically means you have me in your back pocket. So instead of just getting coaching like once a week on our calls, you have it every day. Not on the weekends, especially not the weekends I've got the girls, but you've got it every Monday through Friday. And so you can get so much more coaching done that way. So Voxer access is the way to go, but you only get that in the 3-month package, which is £667 a month. Also, obviously, I've got the divorcee programs. So if you haven't seen that, just go to my profile. You can see all of the videos of all of the lessons, like previews of the lessons, like 1-minute trailers. Go to my website. The link is in the bio. You can get the details for all of them. There is the bronze level, which is just the programs themselves, and that is £122. There's silver, where you get 1 call with me a month, and then there's gold, where you get 3 calls with me a month, and the Voxer, the magical Voxer. And honestly, that is like insanely helpful, especially if you are going through the intensity of being anywhere in the divorce process or the dating, because you can drop in anytime and be like, Lindsey, I need you. And I'll be like, hi, I'm here. I mean, maybe not immediately, but within that day, I'll be like, yes, I've got you. What do you need? How can I help? So super, super, super helpful. And is there anything else? Share this with your friends. Always share with your friends. I always want you to share with everybody. I think that's it. Okay, let me know if you want to chat more, and thank you for being here. Also, if you have made it this far, I have one last request for you if you are still listening. Could you just let me know in the comments what your favorite part of this was, or something interesting that you're like, oh yeah, that was interesting, I'm glad I listened, because I'm just curious to know what you guys get out of this. So if you want to let me know any like takeaways, or thanks for saying this, or hadn't thought of that before, or whatever else, that would be super cool. Okay, that's really it. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Love you. Bye.